Welcome back to The Burn with Ryan Van Deaver, presented to you by Hot Zone Sports. The information that you need to know, built with you in mind, for the people, by the people, and with the people. Join the Hot Zone Sports community today. Make sure you like the videos, subscribe, and share it with your friends. What is going on, everybody? Ryan Van Deaver, The Burn Podcast. How are we all doing today? It is Tuesday, October 22nd. The Steelers beat the crap out of the Jets on Sunday night. We are going to dive into that because there is a lot going on there. And not just the game, a lot going on behind the scenes. We have Woody Johnson of the Jets playing GM. Yeah, he's the owner. What does that tell you? We got Tomlin going to Russell Wilson. It was looking a little bit rocky, to say the least, at the start of the game. I posted a reel about it. But by the end of the game, it turned into looking like a genius move. But it was the Jets who struggled massively over the past few weeks, but more to come on that. I do want to talk about the Chiefs because it was truly interesting how the game developed, and, we get another joyful week of all the fans chirping that the Chiefs were bailed out by the refs, bailed out, that football is no longer football, so we'll get into that. All I got to say is I understand where the fans are coming from. So that is going to be the plan for this episode. Yeah, after reported Hassan Reddick is coming back, his agents were fired, right? So he gets Drew Rosenhaus, a powerhouse of a deal maker, and like the history of the business, he got the deal done. And as Schefter reported, he's the first guy to hold out in the last decade into this season. Yeah, they got a reworked deal, and so I decided to click on the article that Schefter tweeted out, and it was quoted in there that dealt with the deal with Drew Rosenhaus, who said he dealt directly with Woody Johnson, not the GM, not Joe Douglas. He dealt with Woody Johnson. Who do you think made the trade last week for Davante Adams? Yeah, you're correct. That's Woody Johnson. Do you think it was Joe Douglas, who's clearly a walking dead man and will not be the general manager of the team next year because his deal's up and the team hasn't had any success whatsoever? Of course not. There's Woody Johnson. You can't function like that. Just look at the Cowboys. They don't really have a general manager. The general manager is the owner. Look how well that's being turned out. Well, not well. And it's the same thing here. I don't pretend to be right about everything. I'm wrong about lots of stuff. But when Tomlin went to Russell Wilson, honestly, when the rumor started last week, I didn't believe him. I thought it was a bit of gamesmanship, trying to throw off the other team. But then there was a viral video of George Pickens acknowledging that Russell Wilson was starting. And I think it was either Thursday or Friday afternoon. It really couldn't be denied after that. I was like, yeah, maybe I was wrong. And then the game starts and you're like, this is nuts. He's skipping balls on the ground. He looks atrocious. But Mike Tomlin, when Russell Wilson starts, you don't have to go. Do you think it was Rooney's? It was Rooney's idea? Do you think it was the new GM? No, it was Mike Tomlin's decision. But whenever you go with the Jets, you go, what's going on? Who's making these decisions? And the answer is nobody knows. Sometimes it's the owner. Sometimes it's the 40-year-old quarterback named Aaron Rodgers, who's nowhere near as good as he once was. That is obvious. Even though he's way better than anything they've had, they're a team full of players, but they are not a cohesive unit, not like the Steelers, the Ravens, the Chiefs. But at one point, the Steelers Jets game was pretty close. Right around halftime, it was 15-13. But then, as the game goes, you realize they barely know each other. On some of the players on the team aren't even good anymore. Tyron Smith, this guy's had a great career. He's a Hall of Fame level player. He is a stud. No one that's played with him, that's played against him, that knows the guy, you've never heard negative things said about him publicly. Privately, he's not that good anymore. Like, that's part of sports, right? But he's just not in his prime anymore. He has passed his prime. And the Jets, you're like, this is not going to work. You go to an interim coach who's never coached, who was like, listen, I really liked him when I was a kid. when he was a player, seems like an intense guy. But now their defense sucks. I mean, their defense is getting shredded these last 2 weeks. Now, why is that? Because the head coach can no longer just focus on the defense. He's also got to be the head coach because that's his new responsibility. You look over at the Steelers sideline, they've had 3 coaches in basically the last 50 years. And there's a hierarchy. Mike Tomlin. And then on down, and everyone answers to him. And we all know what we're going to get tonight. But the action was kind of cool because they were in the red zone. They were like at the 5-yard line. Tomlin looks over his offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, and you could tell he was saying something to him. Obviously, we didn't know what it was at the time. And if you listen to the broadcast, Chris Collinsworth was like, I bet he's telling him to run the ball. Turns out he was telling him to throw a fade to George Pickens. It didn't work, but clearly that came from Tomlin. That's why he's the boss. This is the knock on the Cowboys. You go, who's the boss? Well, it's Jared. But he's not coaching me. Can I just circumvent him and go talk to the owner? Even though the defensive coordinator is telling me one thing, clearly they're going to go with Russell Wilson going forward. But I just thought that was culture. And Raiders, that if you ever wanted anything changed schematically, play-wise, you just go around the head coach. The coaches have a go right to Al Davis. That's what happens with the Cowboys. That's kind of what's happening right now with the Jets. And it is a problem. It does not work. And it definitely does not work with your owners. Woody Johnson. And you saw tonight an organization that's buttoned up, that wins now. They haven't won a Super Bowl in a long time, but they haven't won a playoff game in a while, but they never have a losing record. And now it looks like they're headed towards one of their better seasons. Over the last 3 to 4 years, it looks like they can get to 11 or 12 wins. The defense is really good. They're tough. They have an identity. The Jets do not have an identity. We'll see this clearly. They're going to go with Russell moving forward, but I just thought that was culture and organizations on full display on Sunday night. And it was an eye-opening experience. Wilson, Justin Fields, clearly, they're going to go with Russell moving forward. But I just thought that was culture. I was wrong about Mike Tomlin, but that's why you know, when you get the right head coach, which is the reason he's had the job for so long. You got to make the right decisions. It's a lot easier to make suggestions than decisions. It's why so many guys go from coordinator positions or position coaches to coordinators and become overwhelmed, because I've always had the ideas, I've always made these suggestions, but I've never had been the one to make the decision that was a bold move. I don't think any of us are alone that we thought he was insane early in the game when balls were hitting the ground, not even remotely close to wide receivers. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers is kind of slinging it around like he's a 32-year-old. And you're kind of like, Mike Tomlin, you are not going to be able to beat that Aaron Rodgers and now Devontae Adams and Breece Hall. And he's thinking in his head, maybe this ain't going well, or let it play out. Let's take a deep breath. We're not going to overreact to every single play like Woody Wilson would upstairs in the box. And over the course of the game, it was clear it was the right decision. Russell Wilson can no longer really run, but Justin Fields, who's a great athlete, that part of the game is done. You can no longer go on those quarterback scrambles like Justin Fields did. They have no running element with the quarterback, but as Collinsworth mentioned on the broadcast, spreading the ball down the field, on go routes and passes down the sideline opens up the offense. That had not existed with Fields. And one thing Russell has always done, and everyone knows this, is how he can throw a good go ball or a lollipop throw, if you want to call it that. And on Sunday, it felt like he's a little off. He's clearly nowhere near as good as he once was, but he hit some of those passes, and George Pickens was a major, major factor that had not become one, or had become actually less of one with Fields in the lineup. And then when they were doing that, it opened up the run, and then they just took complete control of the Jets, whose defense has got to be one of the most fraudulent units. But like the Steelers, can't win the AFC with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I think depending on the matchup, it would be tough for them to win a playoff game. As the game played on, it was clear, like, okay, I get it. The thing about Russell Wilson is that when he has to make those touch passes instead of 100-mile-an-hour fastball throws like Justin Fields does, the problem is Justin Fields cannot make those touch passes. If he could have made some of those passes when he played in the prior weeks of the season, even up to previous this week, he would have probably still had the starting job, but he can't. And as you saw on Sunday night, the Steelers' offense was a little bit more explosive than the passing game opened up. And when that happened, it was basically over. Basically game over. The Jets were not stopping anything. Obviously, Russell Wilson is not the player he was with the Seahawks. He's not as explosive as a runner. Hell, he can't even run anymore. He's basically a statue. But he's still better than Justin Fields, and that is obviously apparent. It's not even debatable. It's easy to think that he missed part of the last season because of Sean Payton didn't want to pay him his bonus. And then he comes over to the Steelers and he misses training camp. And this is basically his first action this season besides practice. Then the whole situation was playing out. Fields was more like a 10-year vet. How mature he was. He didn't go, because early in training camp, he believed that he should be the starting quarterback. And then he was asked Wednesday or Thursday last week, and you could tell that he was definitely upset. He said, I could have done more. Could have been better. I wasn't good enough. Like, all right. That was a really impressive comment, and that goes back to the Steelers culture. Because what was he going to say? Because that ship doesn't fly there. That's why when you start acting like an idiot, unless you're Antonio Brown and you're that damn good, the team just has to deal with it. Unless you're an elite all-pro player, you kind of got to either stay in shape or they're going to kick you out. And it feels better in that culture, and he's a high character guy. No problems to begin with. But right now, you couldn't ask for a better quarterback room. Now, going back to the Jets, they remind me of the 90s Washington Redskins Commanders, whatever you want to call them. They were the Redskins back then. That's the type of vibe that they're giving me. They have the players, but they don't have any cohesiveness. And when it comes to a team, I'm sure you all remember how Dan Snyder was when he was the owner. It was like just a complete dumpster fire. They had players, but they didn't have any cohesiveness whatsoever. The Jets' offense is just really bad right now. And they scored 20 points last week. 7 of those points came off of a Hail Mary. And then they scored 15 points on Sunday night, and that is with Devontae Adams on the team. They're just really bad right now, and their defense is not doing them any favors. I think the defense is actually worse than the offense at this point, but that is what you're going to get if you were a Jets fan. This is what you're going to expect every week, except next week when you play the Patriots. Yeah, you will win that game, but it's not going to be anything that needs to be talked about. I mean, their head coach has been a head coach for like 12 or 13 days. Their offensive coordinator has been run out of town multiple times. This is the team that they are. The Indianapolis Colts. Their offense was absolutely abysmal in the first half of Sunday's game against the Dolphins. They logged 3 3-and-outs and just 4 completions by Anthony Richardson through the first 30 minutes. The first possession of the second half featured a little bit more of the same, with a 3-yard completion to Josh Downs, followed by an incompletion to wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. and a 2-yard scramble by Richardson, which led to a 4th and 5. Indianapolis' offense often looked just completely stuck in the mud, as they couldn't do anything. And the Dolphins don't exactly have the greatest defense in the world. They're not exactly world beaters. The quarterback who was supposed to pull the corpse out of it endured his share of miscues that kept pulling them back in. Accuracy is remaining a glaring issue for Anthony Richardson. The Colts' second-year quarterback who returned from a 2-game absence due to a right oblique injury finished Sunday 10 of 24 for 129 yards, including a handful of ridiculously erratic throws that have become just a staple in his games throughout the early stage of his career. The last time Indianapolis won a game with a quarterback completing less than 45% of his passes was when Carson Wentz, yeah, there you go, Colts fans, was 5 of 12 passing for 57 yards in a win over New England Patriots in 2021. As you may recall, Wentz was essentially banished from the franchise after that season. Richardson, on the other hand, he is not going anywhere. And he shouldn't be. You're not going to see Flacco taking over the starting spot if Richardson is healthy. I know a lot of you think that's going to happen. It's not. These are the growing pains the Colts signed up for when they drafted someone this young and inexperienced, fourth overall in 2023. Shane Steichen knows how to work with quarterbacks. It's just crazy how much coaching matters. Speaking of coaching, Shane Steichen has coached quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, Herbert from the Chargers. He has been around. He's coached Rivers. Rivers actually loved him when he was his quarterback coach. He's proven that over the years he knows how to work with experienced quarterbacks. But I do think there are certain players that if they have the best coaching possible, if they have the most talent around them possible, they were on like dream teams, Pro Bowl rosters, they still wouldn't be good enough. This stuff's really, really hard. And there are all types of really, really competitive industries that certain human beings just aren't talented enough, and they eventually get weeded out. Not because they don't care, not because they don't have the intellect to succeed, but because of the effort or the work ethic, just simply because whatever business they don't have the talent. You see this in a lot of sports. And you see this in a lot of the music industry as well. With technology, you can fake it for a little bit. You know that phrase, fake it till you make it. You can't do that in the NFL. Once you get to the highest level, you get weeded out if you're not good enough. And I am watching Anthony Richardson on Sunday, eyes peeled, every single play. And I understand from all of the reports that I've read over these past couple of years that Anthony Richardson is a nice guy. And he impressed everybody at the combine, even Colts fans, and including Jim Irsay. His physical gifts are obviously out of this world. We've never seen something like this in the NFL. Yes, you have Lamar Jackson, but 6'5", 250, it's a little bit different. But right now, they ain't putting any sugar on top. He's a terrible football player. Right now. When you take Huntley, who got injured in the game, and Tim Boyle, who had one of the worst final passes in a game you'll ever see, he threw it out of bounds on a 4th and 15, on a 4th down. It's 15 to 26, 115 yards, which I think if I just said Tyler Huntley, Tim Boyle are your quarterbacks, they're going to play a game. It's going to be hard to be worse than that in any NFL game all season long. Anthony Richardson, he went 10 for 24 for 130 yards in the same game. I don't believe the stats actually tell you how bad he actually was and what I witnessed. Somehow, miraculously, the Colts ended up winning that game. And they are extremely lucky to win that game. I understand why the Colts are playing Anthony Richardson. They drafted him 4th overall. Only way he's going to improve, in theory, is to get actual game time reps. But there is a chance that if you just keep rolling him out there, he will continue to be as bad, and he will not ever get any better. I think there was above a coin flip, as well above a 50-50 chance. This is who he kind of is. In fairness to Shane Steichen, during this game, he kind of acknowledged and treated him like a running back. This is a guy who gets injured all the time, and it was clear, like, if he gets injured, so be it. We can't, in some passing situations, having have him throw the ball if they truly want to win on a weekly basis and try to make the playoffs. They would go with Joe Flacco. That gives them the best chance to win. If they keep rolling this out, which, like I said, I understand they're just trying to make the guy that they drafted really early work, and they should just come out and say that, which they won't, because that's not the way it works, but they don't need to, because we all know it, because if you keep him in there, like, you barely beat the Dolphins, who without Tua Tagovailoa is just easily one of the worst teams in the NFL, who played Snoop Huntley, who's, wasn't bad when he played for the Ravens, but you watch them, they're pretty terrible. And Tim Boyle, who's actually even worse, and they could barely win that game. I mean, it was 10-10 going down the stretch in the fourth quarter. That's an embarrassment. When you thought the Eagles and the Browns game was bad, you should have turned the channel on your NFL Sunday ticket and watched this one for 5 minutes. This was worse. I think by the end of the season, they might have to acknowledge not that we picked the wrong guy, because they picked it knowing what they were getting into was a major project, a great unknown. They're basically swinging for the fences. We're going to try to coach him up, but this guy might just be someone that you can't coach up. He's just not accurate enough. He does not have the touch. He just can't make the throws, like every once in a while. Even Russell Wilson saw a couple of nice little touch throws, plus some bad ones, of course, but also some good ones. Like, he has it in there. Obviously, Rodgers, he has it. And any starting quarterback for a long period of time has it. No one cares if you can throw it 100 miles an hour on every single pass. And that's what it feels like. So, Colts fans, it's going to be a wild ride. It sucks because, would the Colts have won this game 30-10 if Joe Flacco was playing? And the answer is probably yes. Yeah, I could be wrong here towards the end of the season. Let's say week 15, magic crystal ball here. By a miracle, Anthony Richardson transforms into a serviceable quarterback. And by serviceable, I mean can actually make some throws on a consistent basis. Well, if that is to happen, I will eat crow. Not physically. I'm not the Florida State fan, but I will eat crow. And I will talk about it. How I called this wrong. From all that I've seen, from 4 games he played last season up until this point, I haven't seen much of progression. You'll hear a lot of people saying that he's progressing. He's getting game time reps. He's getting better. The only way he's going to learn is if he's in the game. And I get that. But at some point, the coaching staff is going to have to come together and wave the white flag and say, okay, this is what we have. But obviously, Joe Flacco is not going to be the long-term solution either. And I've been saying it ever since Arch Manning signed with Texas. Jim Irsay loves him some Manning. In a couple of years, whether it be with Anthony Richardson playing, because we obviously know that he cannot win a highly competitive game up to this point. I don't know. It is just a struggle watching the Colts play week in and week out, knowing that they have pretty good ball catchers. They have a really great running back. They have an all right defense. The biggest problem of the defense is that they can't stop the damn run to save the world. Other than that, the secondary is actually coming together, even with all the injuries. That's a miracle in itself. But I don't know It's we'll see how the rest of the season looks, but if Anthony Richardson doesn't improve drastically, I don't know if he could end up being he could probably end up being the backup for the foreseeable future. But for right now, all the Colts fans in the world know watching Anthony Richardson play right now either gives you a massive grimace when he runs or gives you a vomitous feeling when he actually attempts to throw a pass. But this is what the Colts have right now. And this Sunday, they're going to have a bigger test. The Houston Texans. That is going to be a really big test. And I have a feeling CJ Stroud is going to bust out of a shell because his last game was hot trash. And he's going to want to prove to the world, hey, I'm back. I am that guy. I am him. You can't really say you are him when you are playing the Colts defense. Just saying. I have thought over the past 3 to 4 weeks that Jared Goff is the clear favorite for the MVP. But man, after last night's performance, Lamar Jackson may be catching up to Goff in that regard. Lamar Jackson could easily be in line to be MVP this year again because he's really good at football. And last night, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came and scored on their opening drive, and the Buccaneers defense went out there and 3-and-outed at Lamar and got off the field, and then the Bucs are up 10-0. This could be a good night for Tampa. Listen, guys, things can change momentum. Momentum can switch, and then Lamar started playing football. And he is unbelievable. He can avoid the rush and now keep his head up and find the receiver. And then he can take off and just gut you. He was just relentless last night. He was relentless in a similar way that we watched Josh Allen, relentless, that we've seen in the past. Aaron Rodgers when he was MVP, be relentless. We saw him as relentless as Russell Wilson when he was cooking. And by relentless, I mean you can't get him on the ground. When you have him surrounded or seemingly sacked, you can't get him phased. He's the one who is just constantly coming at you and looking to steal your soul. And he has actually played better this year than his previous 2 MVP seasons. And in those seasons, it was one of those like, well, yeah, who's going to really catch the football from him? He's got Zay Flowers. He has Rashad Bateman in the end zone. He now has 4 career 5-touchdown games in which he has 5 or fewer incomplete passes 4 times in his career. 4. Do you know who's had that many such games in their career? Nobody. He's the first to do it. Jackson now has a 5th career game with 5 passing touchdowns and no interceptions. Brady and Breeze have more than that. They have 8, but Lamar now has 5, tied with Rodgers, Peyton, and Ben Roethlisberger in that regard. He had yet another terrific game under the lights. 18-5 now in his career. It's the best primetime winning percentage in the Super Bowl era. The only one with a better one is Steve Young, who is 23-6. Performed as an MVP last year and then raises his game this year, and we'll discuss in a second. He was 17 for 22 last night with 281 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 158.1 passer rating on Monday Night Football against Tampa Bay. Team at 4-2. That is the only team to have beaten the Detroit Lions this year, in Detroit, by the way, too. And what he looked like last night and what he's doing again this year, the first time the Ravens have ever dug out of an 0-2 hole with a 5-game winning streak. The crazy thing is that not too long ago, Lamar Jackson was in fact available to be had in the league. When he was saying, I'm holding out on the Baltimore Ravens and I want to trade. And I was like, okay, well, the Jets and nobody else should trade 2 first overall picks. This guy that may be up there would be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But there were many reporters saying that teams were deliberating on giving up 2 first-round picks. I was like, okay, that's a bit much, but apparently not. But this is a great spot for Baltimore to have him, and why he's in a great spot with Baltimore. This said, I don't know if he would have the same success if he had went to Atlanta, if he had went to Indianapolis, if he had gone to the New York Jets. And what a lot of people thought they should do, and what they were apparently considering doing before Arthur Smith said, the Arthur above the flowchart said, let's not do this right. And the Jets, who were, kicking around Derrick Carr, and then Aaron Rodgers, I don't imagine anybody, if this was the guy, that they were going to get a would-be missing, they wouldn't be missing any first-round selections. They would have already forgot that they gave away 2 first-round selections, because he's just, there's only one way to explain it. He is out of his gourd right now. That's how well he's playing, and that is exactly why John Harbaugh, when Lamar did ask for the trade, Harbaugh didn't peep a bit about it when there was press availability at the owners' meeting. Remember, that happened, that it looked like Lamar had sit on that public request while he said nothing, and the Ravens kept everything in-house. And you did hear stuff from Lamar's camp about, well, you did hear stuff about Lamar's work ethic and his eating habits and all that sorted stuff out. But that is long, long gone. And yes, it does matter what might happen later on this postseason when Lamar is going to have to win, because he has struggled at this point in his career at winning in the playoffs. But it is definitely going to help that the Ravens do have the help from a Hall of Fame running back. And at this point in time, because that's what the Ravens have in the first half, where Lamar was just going off, and it was only 17-10. They scored 17 unanswered points after the Bucs scored the first 10 unanswered. And then they got a field goal to go up 20-10, and then Derrick Henry does what Derrick Henry does. He kicked it off. And that's what they've got in Derrick Henry. He's the guy who, through 7 weeks, leads the NFL in carries, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, and 100-yard games. Did I miss anything? He has 873 rushing yards through 7 games of the season, which is his best such mark through 7 games of the season in his career. So the idea of basically marrying Derrick Henry to the Ravens rush game with Lamar Jackson, meeting him at the mesh point, seems to have been a very, very genius idea. And when it comes down to playing the Chiefs, Bills, or any other contenders in the AFC Championship, where Lamar Jackson and the Ravens have struggled, Henry is going to make it that much easier to smash the door open to get to that Super Bowl. Nobody is wondering right now if the Ravens are going to be able to make this offense work. It is humming very efficiently right now, if I might add. Through 7 games, they are the first team to average 250 yards passing and 200 yards rushing in the National Football League through the first 7 games of a season. Nobody has ever done that. But how does Derrick Henry actually help Lamar Jackson? YPA. This is a stat you got to look up. Yards per attempt. The Ravens are averaging 10.7 YPA, yards per attempt, after a running play this season. That's the best such mark this century. So they run it, and you're like, oh, okay, we're going to stack the box. And then they pass it, and they get a first down or even stretch the field. Amazing that they even lost 2 games playing like this up to this point. But with any great offense, they had to find their legs. The Ravens are playing really well right now in all phases of the game, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Their next 3 weeks, they have the Browns, Broncos, and the Bengals. Bengals might be forward in competition, but the Browns and the Broncos, they'll be 7-2 at that point. They also have a matchup with the Steelers after the Bengals game. I saw a comment on one of my posts yesterday where an unnamed person said, wait until the Steelers play the Ravens. The Ravens offense won't do as well. Now let me tell you this. The Steelers are not the Steel Curtain of the 70s. So y'all need to stop thinking about that. You need to stop comparing TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick to Mean Joe Green. It's not happening. Not only do they have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, but they have an assortment of pass catchers. If there were a time that the Ravens were to get to the Super Bowl, it would be this year. The Chiefs might stand in their way, though. I know. The Chiefs. The Chiefs, while their offense isn't great or good for that matter, they have the number 1 defense of the league. And I've even seen worst offenses make it to the Super Bowl with the number 1 defense. Have you ever heard of Trent Dilfer? Moving on to the Chiefs. I get it, really do. Fans of the NFL are sick and tired of the Chiefs. How many times are they going to win these ugly, grinded out games? I mean, they're 6-0. They're the only undefeated team left in the NFL. We'll keep waiting because they play the Raiders next week. And we all know how that is going to play out. Chiefs lost Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco. Travis Kelce seems to be lost whether he's actually at a football game or if he's hanging out with Taylor Swift at another awards show. You picked up Samaje Perine off of a pack practice squad before the season started, and then signed the prodigal son, Kareem Hunt, off the street. You have the likes of L'Jarius Sneed, who got traded to the Titans in the offseason. The losses this season they have had to endure hasn't been unparalleled because the 49ers, they have like 20 players on the injured reserve. But the difference between the two teams is the fact that the Chiefs continue to win week in and week out. This team truly has the next man up mentality. But I do get that many fans hate the fact that they continue to triumph through injuries. But this is the type of culture that Andy Reid has built for the Chiefs. It doesn't matter that Mahomes is good for one ugly pick a game, whether it be at the goal line or not. It doesn't matter that he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. It doesn't matter, folks. The Chiefs are the type of team that will find a way to win. This is who they are. And they will continue to be a tough team to beat. They will find ways to beat you, and that is how it is. They got their 12th consecutive victory, just hanging by a thread most of the game, playing it close, picking off Brock Purdy, just doing enough to stay in the game. Mahomes went 16 of 27 for 154 yards, 39 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, and you cannot forget those 2 picks. What about this game is when Brock Purdy threw those 3 interceptions, and the Chiefs, after the final interception, they needed a drive to close out the game. And they went on a 12-play, 80-yard drive, and 9 of those 12 plays that they ran were running plays. Andy Reid basically told the 49ers, we're going to go front against front. We're going to prove that we can run it down your throat, even down San Francisco's throat, and said, here, take your medicine. That is what happened. Do something about it. And then talk about Mecole Hardman, the Super Bowl hero. He didn't end around, but because they were able to run it so effectively, the linebackers were getting downhill. And that's the analytical part that Andy Reid likes to focus on. He's a very analytical coach. He's always out thinking everybody. He'll hit you up close for the run game, and then we're going to bang it around with our speed with Mecole Hardman. I loved how the Chiefs, it's still the physicality of the last drive to win the game. Yeah, I feel the interceptions are a lot of the miscommunications between him and the receivers, but a little bit of bad luck today. Well, Sunday. The first interception was attempted. It was tipped at the line of scrimmage. The next interception was a miscommunication between him and his receiver. But the crazy thing is last year I was telling everybody that Patrick Mahomes turned into a game manager. Not the quarterback that you saw when he had Tyreek Hill. He's managing the game now. And I might get crucified for that, but I don't care. I know what I see, and that is what I see. He is a game manager now. You don't see him trying to chuck it all around the field all the time now. If anything, he's the dink and dunk master. Patrick Mahomes is a guy that can manage the game. I mean, there's massive injuries at the receiver position. They're still trying to work guys in that had injuries at running back. You know, Kareem Hunt comes off the bench and he's got 22 carries for 78 yards and ran the ball well. Patrick Mahomes has been able to either run the ball, find Noah Gray, who was really big for them on Sunday, and just not having to force the ball down the field. And that's what got himself in trouble a lot last year when he was going through the little lull of a losing streak. He has more interceptions than touchdowns right now. As I said, he's not lighting up the scoreboard. Yes, Joe Burrows has better stats than him. He has more touchdowns. He has more passing yards by a lot. But Mahomes isn't lighting up the scoreboard. He's essentially managing the game. And again, this team is led by its defense, and that's all right. And when the Chiefs need Mahomes to turn into Superman like he did in last year's Super Bowl, he can go be Superman and put that cape on. Bring out. Managing the game and letting your defense lead is ultimately going to win you the game. But that is it for The Burn. If you have not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. And go ahead and like, comment, anything that you thought about this episode. And if you have not followed us on Instagram or TikTok, go ahead and do so because we are posting banger content on a daily basis. Do not miss out. If you are following us on YouTube, go ahead and click that bell icon. That way you do not miss a single episode. This is Ryan Van Dever signing off. Until next time, peace out.